Come on, it's part of the experience.
And what's the other part? Being eaten to death by mosquitoes?
On this day in 2014, Whiplash hit theaters. This Damien Chazelle drama stars Miles Teller as an ambitious music student who's pushed to his very limits by his cruel and abusive teacher played by J.K. Simmons. Simmons received the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his incredible performance, which was more than well-deserved. Is there a movie character that always has you clenching your teeth in anger? Let us know in the comments.
Number 20, Mayor Larry Vaughn, Jaws. At first glance, Larry Vaughn seems like a reasonable guy. He's the mayor of Amity Island, and when a potential shark attack happens in nearby waters, he doesn't want to start a panic, as many businesses in town rely on tourism.
You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
However, as evidence mounts and the death toll rises, it becomes increasingly clear that Vaughn cares less about the public and more about his own standing. Vaughn has all the experts telling him the dangers, yet steadfastly ignores them until he can't any longer. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Vaughn is the bull-headed movie face of every politician who thinks they know better than everyone else.
Those proportions are correct.
Love to prove that, wouldn't you? Get your name into the National Geographic.
Number 19, Shooter McGavin, Happy Gilmore. A smarmy, up-and-coming golfer, Shooter McGavin is outraged when Happy Gilmore's raucous attitude begins disrupting the tournament and taking the spotlight away from him.
Suspend it! I gotta play!
Doug, kick him off the tour.
To that end, not only does Shooter hire a heckler to mock Happy and provoke him at every turn, but he also buys his grandmother's house out from under him. Shooter's dirty tactics and smug attitude come crashing down after he provokes the ire of one of Happy's bigger, meaner fans, Jaws himself, the Bond villain, not the shark movie. Everybody loves to hate Shooter. It's a credit to actor Christopher McDonald that he makes this guy seem so punchable.
Oh, you can count. Good for you.
And you can count on me waiting for you in the parking lot.
Number 18, Yanuk, Train to Busan. Adversity can bring out the best in some, and the worst in others. Yanuk was arguably already a jerk before the zombie apocalypse, though. A selfish and cowardly businessman, Yanuk is certainly understandable in his panic over the dead coming to life.
무슨 관제실 타령이야 지금! 사람인지 뭔지 모를 것들이 미쳐서 날뛰고 있는데 무조건 초년역에 세워요. 알았어?
But at every turn, he uses everyone around him to live just a little longer. In addition, he encourages others to be just as fearful and self-serving as him, locking the protagonists out of a train car on the chance that they're infected. Karma eventually catches up with him though, as Yanuk is bitten and becomes a zombie, menacing our heroes one last time. Self-interest can only get you so far.
아저씨, 저 무서워요.
Number 17, Walter Peck, Ghostbusters. Given that the Ghostbusters are walking around toting unstable nuclear devices on their backs, it was only a matter of time before they caught the attention of the government.
Frankly, there have been a lot of wild stories in the media, and we want to assess any possible environmental impact from your operation.
That attention comes from Walter Peck, a member of the Environmental Protection Agency. While you could argue that Peck is just doing his job, and that the Ghostbusters do seem like con men from the outside, he goes about his business in the most off-putting and insulting way possible. And typically, the jerk decides to cut off the power to their containment unit, releasing ghosts into the city and nearly destroying it. Way to do the exact opposite of your agency's stated mission, Peckerless. By which we mean he doesn't have a woodpecker, or a...
All right. Well, that's what I heard.
Number 16, Margaret White, Cary. The titular Cary White may be the psychic fire that sets her fellow students ablaze, but she didn't create the kindling. Her mother did. Margaret White is a tyrannical mother to Cary.
Oh, Mom! Oh, don't lie to me, Cary.
Marietta, don't you know by now I can see inside you? I can see the sin as surely as God can.
Her fanatical religious views and intolerance of anything sinful, which includes just about everything, leads her to heap abuse on her daughter. Having a character be an abusive parent is a guaranteed way to get the audience to hate them, but Margaret's particular brand of delusion and viciousness gets under our skin. However, Margaret reaps what she sows after Cary snaps and her witch of a daughter puts an end to her. Number 15, Terrence Fletcher, Whiplash. Most movie teachers are positive role models. Fletcher is not.
Although why anybody would have anything other than peaches and cream to say about me is a mystery.
While many teachers try to build up their students, Terrence Fletcher only seems to tear them down. He continually mistreats his pupils with emotional and verbal abuse until they either break or get better, or both. While he tries to pass it off as using tough love to create the next great jazz musician, Fletcher's cruelty is more than just the method to his madness. It's despicable, and even experiencing it secondhand by watching him on screen makes us seethe that Fletcher and people like him can get away with this kind of behavior.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
Number 14, Cal Hawkley, Titanic. Romance films are rarely kind to romantic rivals, and Titanic is the biggest romance movie of all time, so it's only natural that audiences hate Cal.
Don't you understand? The water is freezing and there aren't enough boats. Not enough by half. Half the people on this ship are going to die.
Not the better half.
The snobby, arrogant fiancé of Rose, Cal Hawkley is oddly possessive over a woman he just met. Cal's outdated, though likely period-correct attitude towards his soon-to-be wife extends to seeing her like property, having her followed, and slapping her. And that's before he tries to kill her and Jack. And while there is a certain amount of inherent bias, Rose is telling the story after all, Cal still feels like a jerk unworthy of her, and of making it to shore.
I always win, Jack.
And lower away evenly, lads.
One way or another.
Number 13, The Armitage Family, Get Out. Racially motivated criminals are always heinous, but the Armitage family is particularly disturbing. This monstrous clan is part of a grisly cult that uses the bodies of young black people to transplant their minds into, gaining a kind of immortality.
See, I don't know if it's the hypnosis that's making them slaves or whatnot, but all I know is they already got 2 brothers we know, and it could be a whole bunch of brothers they got already.
Each member of the family has their own sinister role to play, whether it's luring their victims in, hypnotizing them, or performing the procedure. Their deeds are as horrific or even worse than slavery, depriving their victims of control over their own bodies. Chris wreaking havoc on them in his desperate escape is tremendously satisfying.
People want to change. Some people want to be stronger, faster, cooler.
Black is in fashion.
Number 12, Bill Lumberg, Office Space. Bill Lumberg is the embodiment of everyone's awful middle management boss.
Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and make sure you get another copy of that memo, okay?
He micromanages his employees and needles them about minutia like TPS reports. He doesn't even make the effort of pretending to care about them or their time, with his treatment of poor Milton directly leading to his company getting burned down. And that droning, irritating voice of his just gets under our skins. And we don't even work for the guy. While he may not get the comeuppance we all know he deserves, it's still satisfying to see Lumberg get grilled about his management style by the efficiency consultants.
Oh, and I almost forgot. I'm also gonna need you to go ahead and come in on Sunday, too, okay?
Number 11, Carter Burke, Aliens. Carter Burke may seem like an okay guy, but don't let that fool you. He's really a terrible company man. The slimy weasel accompanies Ripley to LV 426 as the corporate liaison to investigate the alien incursion there. Naturally, Burke is more than just a suit. He wants to retrieve an alien to use as a bioweapon and to get rich doing it.
Look, those 2 specimens are worth millions to the bioweapons division, right? Now, if you're smart, we can both come out of as heroes, and we will be set up for life.
He goes to any lengths to achieve this goal, even purposefully exposing Ripley and the young Newt to an alien facehugger. Oh, and did we mention the whole disaster, which nearly killed all the colonists, was his fault too? Burke meeting his fate at the hands of the very aliens he unleashed is all he deserves.
This is so nuts. I mean, listen to what you're saying. It's paranoid delusion. It's really sad.
Number 10, Biff Tannan, the Back to the Future franchise. This guy is a real butthead. The quintessential movie jerk, Biff Tannan is lazy, dim-witted, and violent.
Well, actually, I figured since it wasn't due till Monday.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think McFly.
He causes problems for generations of the McFly family, particularly George and Marty. In addition to walking all over George, Biff also tries to force himself on Lorraine, George's eventual wife. Then there's the timeline where his future self helps his past self get rich, leading to Hill Valley becoming a lawless hellscape that he rules with impunity. Biff is so hateable because he's so relatable. We've all probably encountered someone like him at some point. We can't say he isn't entertaining though. Those mixed metaphors are hilarious.
Since you're new here, I'm gonna cut you a break today. So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
Number 9, Matilda's Family and Miss Agatha Trunchbull, Matilda.
Matilda Wormwood is an incredibly gifted child, possessing a genius-level intellect at a young age and telekinetic powers.
Why would you want to read when you got the television set sitting right in front of you?
However, her parents are incredibly neglectful, not even allowing her to go to school until she's 6 and probably failing to teach her anything at all.
Hey, Dim Face! Have a marshmallow!
Her brother is a dim-witted rascal.
Meanwhile, when she does go to school, Matilda encounters Miss Trunchbull, her school's tyrannical principal, who frequently abuses students in outlandish ways.
Her sweat and blood went into this cake, and you will not leave this platform until you have consumed the entire confection!
Just watching Matilda have to deal with them for a few hours is enough to make us despise them, so we really feel for the girl growing up with them all.
Have a carrot!
Number 8, Denethor, the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. The steward of Gondor, Denethor is the ruler of the last land that has fought the forces of Mordor for generations. Denethor is immediately dislikable because of the disparity with which he treats his sons, Faramir and Boromir.
You wish now that our places had been exchanged. That I had died and Boromir had lived.
While he venerates Boromir, he lambasts his more bookish and intelligent son Faramir, and even sends him on what seems to be a mission that'll end in his death. His pride is toxic, as is his despair, since he no longer believes Sauron and his forces can be defeated, and even tries to burn himself and his son, whom he believes is dead, alive. While he's considerably better in the book, Denethor's dour obstruction and despair aren't exactly endearing no matter the medium. John Noble kills it though.
Boromir would have remembered his father's need. He would have brought me a kingly gift.
Number 7, Percy Wetmore, The Green Mile.
A prison guard of death row inmates in 1930s Louisiana, Percy Wetmore is a thoroughly despicable character. Percy is abusive towards the inmates, especially Dell, stepping on his mouse, calling him slurs, and eventually sabotaging his execution to make his death needlessly painful, getting away with it because he's related to the governor.
In addition, Percy is a coward, as he is terrified when one of the more dangerous prisoners stands up to him.
John Coffey ultimately sends Percy into a catatonic state for the rest of his life, and we feel little sympathy for the creep.
Number 6, President Coriolanus Snow, The Hunger Games franchise. The Hunger Games series has plenty of despicable to go around, but the vilest of the vile is President Snow. Head of Panem's dystopian society, Snow oversees the cruel titular games and perpetuates the sharp divide between the haves and have-nots.
Her entire species has to be eliminated.
Her species, sir?
Yeah, the victors. Now, because of her.
They all pose a threat.
While he presents a warm and kind friend, Snow is as cold and calculating as his name implies. He regularly commits atrocities, slaughtering his citizens to send messages to both his enemies and his allies. Katniss may decide against killing him herself, but we can see why fans of the series wanted to see an arrow pierce the area a heart would be, if Snow had one.
I'm sure she wasn't gunning for your sister, but these things happen in war.
Number 5. Mrs. Carmody, The Mist.
Sometimes a crisis brings out the best in people. Mrs. Carmody is at the other end of the spectrum.
Well, if you need a friend, someone to talk to. I have a friend. God, up above. I talk to him every day.
A religious fundamentalist, Mrs. Carmody is trapped in a supermarket with many others when a supernatural mist full of deadly creatures descends on their town.
I'm sorry, everybody, but this lady's perspective is a little too Old Testament for my taste. They'll come for you. Maybe tonight, when darkness comes.
Rather than rise to the occasion, Mrs. Carmody becomes bitter, spiteful, and is convinced that the mist is divine punishment from God.
Expiation! Expiation!
Some of the panicked survivors become convinced that she's right, joining her in sabotaging the protagonists from leaving, and even attempting to murder some of them. Like God would want.
I want that scary lady.
Oh, man, I don't either. But you know what? Maybe she's scared too.
Number 4. Nurse Ratchet, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Speaking of awful people in authority over the confined, Nurse Ratchet is the head nurse of a mental institution.
If Mr. McMurphy doesn't want to take his medication orally, I'm sure we can arrange that he can have it some other way.
Far from being a caring figure, Ratchet is a veritable tyrant, using her position of power over her charges to make life simpler for herself, no matter the cost to their well-being.
I don't have to tell her. Your mother and I are old friends, you know that.
Her revoking of privileges and threats against patients ultimately drive one to take his own life, prompting protagonist McMurphy to nearly choke her to death, for which she has him lobotomized. Positions of power go to people's heads, and Nurse Ratchet is a wretched poster child for abusive authority figures. Number 3. Captain Vidal, Pan's Labyrinth. Fascists in general are easy to hate, but Captain Vidal goes beyond that to be utterly irredeemable.
Al principio no voy a poder confiar en ti. Pero cuando acabe de usar esto, me vas a decir alguna que otra verdad.
While his coldness towards his stepdaughter Ophelia is off-putting, he quickly illustrates himself to be a worse monster than the ones Ophelia encounters. Vidal viciously kills innocent citizens in his pursuit of rebel fighters. He seems to enjoy torturing captives, and he only seems to care about himself and his legacy, his newborn son. Ophelia even falls victim to Vidal when she threatens to take his son, her brother, away. If any man deserves to be forgotten, it's Vidal. Unfortunately, the hate he invokes in us makes him unforgettable.
Decirle a qué hora murió su padre. Decirle que yo.
Ni siquiera sabrá tu nombre.
Number 2. Calvin J. Candy, Django Unchained. Calvin Candy is arguably the most despicable character in a Quentin Tarantino film, which is a truly high bar.
Hey! Don't lay your palms flat on that tabletop! If you lift those palms off that turtle shell tabletop, Mr. Pooch is gonna let loose with both barrels that sawed off.
A slaving plantation owner, Calvin is everything awful about that turned up to 11. He has men fight to the death for his amusement. He has another torn apart by dogs. Plus, we have questions about how close he is with his sister. And for all his claims of racial superiority and greater intelligence, Calvin still gets outthought by his sycophantic slave, Stephen. When Dr. King Schultz finally kills Calvin, he can't resist, and we can't blame him.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
Number 1. Dolores Umbridge, the Harry Potter franchise. You know you've got a vile villain when they're more universally hated than the franchise's main antagonist and Harry's awful family, with all due hate to the Dursleys.
Dolores Umbridge is a government bureaucrat put in charge of teaching at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, who nearly takes over the entire institution.
Can't do this. Actually, I can.
Petty, two-faced, and cruel, Umbridge does her worst not only to suppress the students' education and sense of joy, but also literally tortures them with her draconian punishments, having it out for the series' eponymous boy wizard in particular.
Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished. Don't you, Mr. Potter?
After she's driven out of Hogwarts, she follows it up with falsely imprisoning people for the magic supremacist government run by Voldemort. We'd say she deserves the Dementors, but as Umbridge demonstrates, she's got no soul to suck out.
And one mustn't tell lies.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.